You know, the idea of a World War III, it's not just something you see in headlines, is it? It's this shadow that stretches all the way from the past right into our present. So today, we're going to dig into that. We're going to look at what history can teach us about, well, preventing another one.
Look, to really get what's at stake here, we have to go way beyond the big maps and the fancy treaties. We need to feel what it was like. So let's do that. Let's go back in time to the Battle of the Atlantic and step inside a German U-boat.
Wow, just picture that for a second. That quote, it's not just words on a page, is it? It's meant to put you right there, in that cramped steel tube, hundreds of feet under the water, where every single creak, every sound you hear, could be the last.
And that right there, that's the point. For the guys inside those so-called iron coffins, the war wasn't about grand strategies or politics. No way. It was boiled down to something incredibly simple and absolutely terrifying. Just survive the next hour, the next minute even. That's the real cost of war, isn't it? That feeling times millions and millions of people.
Okay, so that feeling, that piece of history, it might seem like a long time ago, but it's really not as distant as you'd think. The piece that was so hard-won back then is, well, it's pretty fragile. And if you look closely, you can see the fault lines, the potential triggers for the next big conflict all around us, right now.
Take a look at this. This memorial is for some of the very first American soldiers killed in World War I. And the message, carved right there in the stone, is just so simple and so powerful. That we might live. I mean, you can't get more direct than that. It's a straight line connecting their sacrifice to our lives today. It's a reminder of exactly what's at stake.
And that brings us squarely to the present day. The sources we're looking at point to a whole bunch of active conflicts and tension spots all over the world. You've got the war in Ukraine, you've all the tension around Taiwan, ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, the list goes on. And the scary part is, the potential for any of these to escalate, well, that's a very real, very modern problem.
So it's not just where the conflicts are that's different. One of the single biggest changes since the days of those U-boats is the technology. How wars are fought has completely changed. The battlefield isn't just on land, at sea, or in the air anymore. Now it's online.
This is a really critical idea, coming straight from the Army War College. Strategic information warfare. Just think about that for a second. It's the idea that you could win a war without ever fighting a major battle. How? By paralyzing a country. You go after its digital backbone, you shut down the power grids, mess with the financial systems, take out the communication network.
And let's be clear, the weapons for this new kind of war, they're not science fiction. They're here, right now. We're talking about massive cyber attacks that can take down critical infrastructure. We're talking about AI-driven deepfakes that are getting so good they can create total chaos and disinformation. And of course, we've all seen how social media can be turned into a weapon to spread hate and recruit.
I love this metaphor from the U.S. Army War College because it just perfectly explains the new power dynamic. Think of traditional countries with their huge armies as dinosaurs. They're massive, they're powerful, but man, are they slow and cumbersome. Now, think of these non-state networks, terrorist groups, cyber criminals, as the first mammals. They're small, they're quick, and they're incredibly adaptable. And just like the mammals, they can challenge the dinosaurs in ways that are totally new and unexpected.
Okay, so we've got the digital battlefield, but there's another huge risk factor, and this one is as old as humanity itself, fighting over resources. The difference is, the resources we're fighting over are changing, and that means we're seeing totally new hotspots pop up around the globe.
It's a really simple way to put it, but it's so true. For most of the last century, wars were about oil. That's what powered everything. But tomorrow, the sources we looked at suggest the fights could be over two things: water, which is getting scarcer and scarcer, and the specific metals that power our entire digital world. I mean, everything from your phone to an electric car depends on them.
And listen, this isn't some far-off, abstract idea. It's happening now. Just look at the tensions flaring up over river water between Iran and Afghanistan, or Egypt and Ethiopia. Think about the fact that China pretty much controls the entire market for rare earth metals. That gives them a massive strategic advantage. Or get this, what if the countries in South America with all the lithium formed a cartel? It'd be like a new OPEC, but for the batteries that power everything.
So let's recap. We've got new digital weapons used by new kinds of groups fighting over totally new resources. That's a lot. And all of it is putting a huge strain on the very institutions that were built after World War II to stop this from ever happening again. So the big question is, can they still do their job?
This really breaks it down, doesn't it? The promise versus the reality. On one hand, you have the promise. The UN Charter was written to prevent the scourge of war. Awesome. But in reality, the Security Council veto means one of the big powers can stop anything in its tracks. We have international courts to prosecute war crimes, but powerful countries can just decide not to participate. It goes back to that dinosaur metaphor, right? These institutions were kind of built by the dinosaurs for the dinosaurs. They really struggle to deal with the fast, flexible mammals of today.
And this is where that echo of history gets really, really loud. We've seen this movie before. Back in the 1920s and 30s, there was the League of Nations. It was supposed to stop another world war from ever happening, and it failed. It was too weak, it couldn't act, and that failure created a power vacuum that was filled by aggression, which led directly to World War II. That's a lesson we just can't afford to forget.
Okay, so with all these huge forces swirling around, new tech, resource grabs, failing institutions, it's easy to feel kind of powerless, right? Like we're just along for the ride. But the sources we looked at all point to one last, absolutely crucial factor that brings it all back down to a human level, and that's choice.
This quote, which is about how World War I started, is fascinating. There's this idea that the leaders back then were sleepwalkers. They weren't these evil geniuses plotting to destroy the world. Not at all. They were just overwhelmed. Events were moving too fast. They misread the situation, made mistakes, and made a whole series of small, bad choices until suddenly they had stumbled into a global catastrophe they never really wanted.
And that, right there, is the most important takeaway. It's urgent, yeah, but it's also kind of hopeful. Because if a massive war isn't some inevitable destiny, but is actually the result of a bunch of small, flawed human choices, well, that means it can also be prevented by a series of better human choices. By being aware, by being careful, by choosing diplomacy, it puts the power and the responsibility right back into our hands.
So we're left with this final thought. You've heard the saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And we can definitely hear those rhymes, can't we? The echoes from those iron coffins, the fracturing institutions, the danger of sleepwalking into disaster. The pattern is there. The only question is, are we actually listening to the echo this time?